Alabama 1st and 10 on the 12. Again, Houston. He's got a hole. He's over. Alabama touchdown.
I'm just wondering if your listeners know how good a football player you were. I can still see you playing that fullback, knocking those players out of the way. And that, I believe I could have run behind you.
Martin, I can remember when we came to summer and you were playing fullback up there, and I saw you in the weight room and watched you work out in the weight room. If you could you were strong enough to pick up the whole weight room. I wanted to fix it, and our running back coach didn't take it. Biggest mistake we ever made.
The Martin Houston Show with national championship winning fullback Martin Houston, giving you 1 hour of intense, hard-hitting analysis from an insider's perspective. It's time for the Martin Houston Show on your home for Alabama sports, Tide 100.9, and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Good morning. Welcome into the Martin Houston Show. Martin and Xavier, powered by MaX Sports. On a beautiful Monday morning, we're live, local, and ready to get things going. I want to invite you to get in on the conversation at 205-342-9904. 205-342-9904. That's the Alabama One hotline. It is open for business. So I want to invite you to get in, like I said, on the conversation. Let us hear from you this morning. And we'd like to invite you to also join us if you happen to be available on the live chat and tuning in there on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Put your thoughts, your comments, your ideas, any questions you may have coming off of the weekend. We'd love to hear from you and have you be a part of the conversation. Not a lot necessarily per se coming out of the weekend. If Nick Saban talked about it, we have it. So we might work that into the conversation today and throughout the week. So we invite you to get in on that. If you'd like to bring up a topic that I don't get to, always feel welcome to do so. Lots of chatter around the quarterback. Did someone separate themselves? Did someone make a big step in terms of making a move in the quarterback position? And was it one of the guys that we were thinking about, Buckner, Simpson, Miro, or was it someone else? Could we have a surprise quarterback battle brewing at Alabama? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the defensive line, what Nick Saban had to say about that. I've been talking about Jam, the J&J conversation, Jamari Miller or Jam and Justin. By the end of the season, those two guys as a combo may have more carries than the JR combination. So JJ versus JR. We'll see if that started to make itself known a little bit. And with some of the outside linebackers maybe getting some notice and making a few plays. Ken Keeley was even talked about offensive line play. We've talked a little bit about those guys as we went throughout the week. Last week, we'll see if there's any new things happening there. Nick Saban still going to do what he always does, try to find the best five, but saying that he has 6 or 7 starters that he feels like could be difference makers. So we'll break them down. We'll talk about them, and to help us do that, we'll be bringing in at Skinny Kenny in the second quarter. We'll be bringing him in to be a part of that conversation, get his thoughts on practice as well in the scrimmage, and maybe a couple position battles that you may or may not be talking about. As we do each and every day, I want to remind you that this is a day that the Lord has made, so let's rejoice and be glad in it. Take some time today to notice someone, love someone, serve someone, be the difference you want to see in the world today. Behind the glass today, we got Miss Kim Rankin pressing all the right buttons, filling in for Noah. So good morning, Kim. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here this early but nice Monday morning.
Yeah, it's usually a little shocker for people who's not used to getting up. It's not just the getting up; it's that you have to get up and you have to be ready to go. Uh, First thing,
Exactly. Little different from Ryan's show, but I'm feeling good, excited for the show,
yeah,
excited for the day.
absolutely. It makes for a nice long day. You get to when I first started doing my show, Kim, I said I did not realize that there was two 5 o'clocks and two 6 o'clocks in the day. So I slept through the first ones for quite a portion of my life. But anyway, but it's going to be a great show. As I said, we'll have Kennington Smith of the Athletic joining us here in a little bit. But just a couple of things, a couple of highlights potentially from stuff you hear. You hear all types of things from uh, from scrimmage. And of course, the big one everybody wants to talk about is I give you one guess. Let's see. Quarterback. We're talking quarterback. What's happened with the quarterback position? You talk to one person and you hear, oh, Milroe separated himself. You talk to another person and Milroe didn't separate himself. Then you talk to a third person and Milroe had the best scrimmage, but he didn't separate himself. I'm like, okay. And then you talk to someone else and all three had a good scrimmage, but Milroe had the best one, but he didn't separate himself. So it really, I don't know what that means other than it doesn't mean anything, maybe, but because it's just all over the board. What's interesting is the following. There's one guy that I'm going to have to, last week, Kim, I told everybody I do a segment anytime I think somebody, they're starting to talk about someone way too much, way too early. I go, pump the brakes, pump the brakes. Give the young man a chance because sometimes we put so much pressure on these young guys that they don't end up living up to the hype, and then we blame the player versus our expectations. And Lonergan is one of those guys that everybody's like, oh my God, he's you need to watch him. He's this, and everybody's talking about the spring. What he did in the spring was good, but it didn't mean anything to me because he was going against the third and fourth team guys. It didn't really mean a whole lot to me. And this is not to be arrogant or anything. I was as a true freshman when I came in. We had our first scrimmage, Kim, and after our first scrimmage, I went against at the beginning of that scrimmage. I was going against the backups, like the fourth team guys and all of that. And then I got a couple reps against the second teamers and older guys. And then after that scrimmage, Coach Curry called me in his office and said, hey, you did really good. So I said, thanks, blah, blah, blah. Really excited. A few weeks next scrimmage, got a few more reps. But my point I'm trying to make is I was ready. I was more advanced than than where I was on the depth chart, but I wasn't quite where I needed to be to play, if that makes sense. And so I wanted people to slow down on Lonergan. I know he's doing good, but now I'm one of those. I'll pump the brakes when I need to. I wanted to see what happens when someone gets against the good reps, and if they do the same thing, then I'll start talking about it. Well, rumor has it that he got some reps against the twos and the ones, Kim, and looked the same way.
Pretty impressive for someone who hasn't taken the field yet and really hasn't been in the
Yeah.
conversation.
So now I can say start easing off the brakes a little bit because this reminds me, his progression reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts, except for no one was really talking about Jalen. Okay. No one was talking about Jalen. And so, but when Jalen came in, it was all of these guys, Blake Barnett, Cooper Bateman, and Barnwell, I can't remember all. It was about 4 or 5 guys. And slowly, you started to hear, well, this Hurts kid may be pretty good. He was an athlete. He was a good quarterback. He was doing this. And slowly, he just kind of worked. And he got all the way to number 2. But he was really the starter. And when you think about it, how much gap is there really between our first team guy right now, the starter right now, if we had to play Saturday and you had to give reps, Jalen Milroe would take the first team reps. That's the first team rep guy, Jalen Milroe. What's the gap, Kim, between the first team guy and the 5th team guy?
I really think it's just the fact that Milroe has started in an actual game. He's seen playing time. Other than that, I really don't see much of a separation as far as what I've been told and have seen.
Experience-wise, that's it. So I guess the reality of it is he's been in camp a year longer. So he's been in the offense technically a year longer or 2 years longer. So that part is good. But if they're revamping how they run this in our entire offense, he's really not that far. And so the reality of it is we have 5, and instead of it being your typical vertical depth chart, we may kind of have this pseudo slant depth chart. In other words, even though we have a bunch of guys, 5 guys, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If Lonergan has got himself to the point where he got some first and second team reps, and you have 3 guys that we think are in the competition, you don't give a 15 guy reps with 1s and 2s when you're in a quarterback battle, unless that guy's in the mix. That's just Martin's thoughts. You don't have enough time to do that unless that guy's a legit shot. So I'm backing up, not backpedaling. I just want everybody to pump the brakes until this happened. And now if this is happening, if that's true, and we're gonna continue to assess it, but if that's true, then we need to really look at that and assess that. We'll ask Kennington Smith with the Atlantic what his thoughts are on the situation and circumstance of that. We'll get some Saban audio coming back from the break. You can get in on the conversation, 205-342-9904, or you can post your thoughts and comments on chat. Nick Saban says he's not a stat guy. I could have swore that an interception and a turnover was a stat. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Tide 100.9 traffic.
From the Townsend Nissan Traffic Center, no active wrecks. Things looking pretty good on this Monday morning, but it's going to be a hot one. So just stay hydrated, stay cool, and do the best you can. Get a $6,000 instant discount on all Nissan Titans and the heavy-duty Titan XD, plus 0% up to 60 months. At Townsend Nissan, I'm Captain Ray.
Calling all HR professionals, contractors, and businesses in Tuscaloosa. Need somewhere for employees to stay while working in town? They have you covered at Sealy Corporate with their affordable and comfortable furnished apartments. Call 205-391-6040 today for more information.
Marketing your business today can be more confusing than ever. Town Square Media Tuscaloosa is the leader in local content for Tuscaloosa and the West Alabama area. We deliver results on air and online for our clients. Here's what our clients are saying about doing business with Town Square Media.
Hey, this is Shane Spiller with Spiller Furniture and Mattress. And every week I have someone tell me, hey, I heard you on the radio. So thanks, Town Square, for helping me to grow my business.
To learn more about our marketing opportunity, contact us at TuscaloosaThread.com. Click on Advertise with Us.
At the Home Depot, we know pros want to be ready for whatever the job site has in store. That's why the Home Depot app is made for pros who don't miss a beat. So you can power your jobs with rentals to get the tools, trucks, and equipment you need fast. And Pro Extra benefits to keep your business growing. For doing that doesn't stop, download the Home Depot app. It's made for doing.
It's the Tuscaloosa Community Calendar, powered by Pepsi.
If you have a community event in Tuscaloosa and West Alabama, Tell us about it. All you have to do is email the information to Tuscaloosa PSA at townsquaremedia.com. Be sure to include all the details like the cause, date, time, location, and a good contact name and number. Email it to Tuscaloosa PSA at townsquaremedia.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Very hot and humid today with a mix of sun and clouds, a few isolated storms this afternoon or this evening. The high today 96, the low tonight 75. Tomorrow not as hot, partially sunny, a small chance of a shower, the high 88. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 77 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
The sound of Bama sports. Your show, your team. The Martin Houston Show on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Welcome back into the Martin Houston Show with Martin and Xavier on Tide 100.9. As we were going to break there, I asked the question there. Nick Saban said he's not a stat guy. Well, the last time I checked, I thought that interception was a stat and turnovers were a stat. And that seems to be the only reason that people are questioning Jalen Milroe, right? Is that he turned the ball over. That's the only reason people question him. They say he's a turnover machine. That's a stat. So is Saban telling me that he's gonna emphasize the negative stat, but he's not gonna emphasize the anyway. Yeah. I told you my thoughts are when you just coach down to that emphasize, especially when you have young guys, you can almost make them not play natural. You can push them into a pigeonhole like we did Jalen Hurts, where they began to not be natural and fluid. Well, to talk about it, to talk about the scrimmage and the practice and all of that, we have Kennington Smith, the Athletic, joining us this morning. At Skinny Kenny, I'm gonna get that right before long. At Skinny Kenny _, at Skinny Kenny _ on Twitter or on the X. I don't know what it is, but yeah, that thing, X, formerly Twitter. Yeah, that. Okay. Are they on? Hey, Kenny. Good morning. How you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Doing well.
How are y'all?
Is it Twitter or is it formerly Twitter or is it X? Is this the Prince thing? What is it?
Yeah, I guess it just depends on whatever your phone says. Like I know some people, their phone automatically updated and their app, it says X and their logo is X. My phone hasn't updated yet, so like it still says Twitter for me. So I think it's like a personal thing for everyone. But Twitter, X, whatever, at Skinny Kenny _ follow me for all Bama coverage. And like you said, Saban has some pretty interesting things to say about the scrimmage on Saturday.
Well, I'll let you start it off and just tell me what's your quick assessment, or not quick? What's your overall assessment of the scrimmage?
Yeah, I think it was probably what you would expect from a first scrimmage, where you appreciate the effort, but in some cases the execution probably wasn't where you would want it to be. He said that, some players made some good plays, but still too many drop passes, not sufficient communication in the secondary at all times, too many penalties, players jumping off sides, and consistency on the offensive line. So there were some highs, there were some lows, but I think that this scrimmage did go a long way and try and providing some clarity into certain position battles. And obviously quarterback is the one where everybody's kind of putting their attention to. And, like you said, he said that they're not really worried about the raw statistics of the quarterbacks. I think it's more of, okay, going back and watching it and seeing who was moving the ball most efficiently. If a quarterback did have an interception or a drop pass, or interception or incompletion, was it a drop pass? Was it, a tip ball? Did the lineman miss a assignment that caused, unnecessary pressure, whatever the case was. So we're going to talk to him again on Tuesday. So I'll be interested to see what his evaluation was after a few days of watching that tape.
Yeah, Kenny, I'm always amazed that when I hear stuff like that. The big question is, we're not going to do stats, but you emphasize one statistical area every single time you come to the mic.
Right, which is turnovers and penalties.
Yeah, right.
So, that's obviously a stat that matters. He had a new one last week where he, I don't know if game time, like the length of the game time is a stat, but every time he's been at the mic, he's emphasized the fact that the team has to do better of sustaining excellence over a long period of time. And he referenced that the two longest games that they played last year in terms of total time were Tennessee and LSU. So I know they keep track of that.
You know what?
Is that a statistic, or is that just like a unit of measurement?
You know what I think that is, Kenny? You know what I think that is? I think he's positioning himself to play more people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like take what you just said, because he started last week. Saban never says anything, Kennington, just to say it. Never. Okay. He's always messaging, and he uses you guys to do that. He uses the media to do that. So he starts talking about this statistic, the long game. And then he says, we had penalties at the end of the game. And then he says, God, and the stories he's told us from the speakers has been about sustaining intensity, right? And then he comes back and in his opening comments yesterday or after the scrimmage was about players need to ask themselves how many plays can they play and maintain the level. I could be wrong, but as I'm listening to that, I'm like, man, this sounds like a guy that's like setting up that hey, you need to play, we need to be subbing you in and out to keep you at that level. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. And I think if you look at the other, like the positions on the team, there are several positions where they do have a lot of different options. I mean, they have 4 running backs when healthy that can all play. I mean, probably up to 8 to 10 receivers who are all competing to be a part of the rotation. They have 3 or 4 tight ends that have been repping with the ones in the secondary. There's 7 or 8 guys who are in that mix competing for spots. I think linebackers, a deep position inside and outside. Really the question marks in terms of depth and guys who need to continue to develop so they can be comfortable there is on the offensive and the defensive line. And when he talks about every other position, he says, we have a lot of guys there, are rotating a lot of guys. When you ask him about the offensive line, defensive line, especially on Saturday, he said, well, we don't have enough depth on the defensive line. He said we have 5, 6 guys who are having good camps, but we need more. On the offensive line, he said we have 6, 7 guys who are ready to play, but we're going to need more than that if we're going to have a successful season. So I think there is something to what you're saying, where depth is going to be a huge part of this season. And it seems like at a lot of positions they have it, but obviously, especially in the SEC, the trenches is where games are decided, and there's just not enough depth at those positions.
Yeah, and I would say I would say depth, SEC, and transfer portal is positioning, because you have to coach differently now. You have guys now that are ready to play. Like, is Ferguson going to be willing to wait another year? Or the Olafs of the world, or Thor, is Thor going to be willing to come all the way from Australia and be good enough to play and wait 2 or 3 years. You know, the guys don't wait. They're not going to wait like they used to, in my opinion, for that one season, that one magical season. And I think that he is extremely smart. He figured out some of the transfer portal woes last year. I think the next step, I think the Tyler Booker thing showed last year that you can play a guy if you train him up in the right way. And just think, had we not played Tyler Booker, where we'd be this year. So in terms of the offensive line, we'd be still looking for that right guard as well. So X, you had a question for Kennington?
Yeah. Good morning, Kennington. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So we talk about all these position battles and the depth. I heard something very interesting from the scrimmage on Saturday, and I just didn't know if there's any validity to it. But that Chris Braswell actually wasn't running with the ones in the way that you would think he would be, but it was actually more of Keanu Cope and with the ones, because Braswell has had some issues with the hard counts. He's such an aggressive, quick jump guy on the snap that the hard counts are getting to him. So we're seeing him actually losing reps due to his aggressiveness. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I can't speak to that specifically. I do think though that when Saban referenced too many times that players were jumping off sides, that would line up to what you're speaking of okay, somebody super aggressive, probably trying to jump the snap count, jumping off sides, and you like that aggressiveness, but it is resulting in negative plays against the defense. So that's how I would answer that question. And if Chris Braswell is losing snaps, they do have veterans back there, like you said. Cott is in his junior year. Quandarius Robinson is a senior as well. So they do have veterans at that position. Guys who are to Martin's point, guys who have kind of waited their turn and are in the wings. They want those opportunities. So that's another position battle where I think you guys have to continue to watch, and I think that's something that we're gonna have to monitor over the next week or so. But I'll be looking for that and trying to gain some more clarity over the next week, so I can speak to that more clearly next week.
Absolutely. Hey, that's Kennington. That's Kennington Smith with the Athletic. Hey, let's get Pat in before we get the break here, and we'll pick up that conversation on the other side. X, that you were about to start. But Pat, thanks for being patient. You're in with Kennington of the Athletic. What's on your mind?
Good morning, fellas. Good morning, Kennington. Hey, I've been preaching from the get-go that Marshall Dillon was ready to play, and nobody would listen to me. Every show I call in, I talk about Dillon, and that he's not been mentioned. Well, what? Creams rises to the top. Marshall Dillon, Matt Dillon. Hey, Gunsmoke. You talk about a gunslinger. He's playing fast and loose. Hey, Martin, you didn't let me. You pumped the ball. Yeah, Dylan Lonergan. Hey, Marshall Dillon. I see it's going to be his new name. Hey, I got y'all to laugh. Hey, Coach did talk about the one thing that you got to listen to what Coach said in his interview. And Kennington, see if you agree with this. Hey, he talked about baking that cake. Well, guess what? He said all 5 quarterbacks got good reps. Hey, when you hearing all 5 quarterbacks got good reps, hey, we got a battle going on.
Hey,
guys.
Pat. Hey, Pat, I'm going to so Kennington doesn't have to short his answer, and we're right up against the break. I'm going to let Kennington respond to that on the other side of the break, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll
all right, thanks, Pat. All right, Kennington, hold on to that question. We'll come back out on the other side. We'll also see what Saban had to say, maybe about that outside linebacker position as well. And more conversation to come right here. We have Kennington Smith of The Athletic. Follow at Skinny Kenny on formerly Twitter, X, and Twitter, based on what your phone says. More conversation up next.
Tide 100.9 traffic.
From the Townsend Nissan Traffic Center, no active wrecks. Things looking pretty good on this Monday morning, but it's going to be a hot one. So just stay hydrated, stay cool, and do the best you can. Get a $6,000 instant discount on all Nissan Titans and the heavy-duty Titan XD, plus 0% up to 60 months. At Townsend Nissan, I'm Captain Ray.
Calling all HR professionals, contractors, and businesses in Tuscaloosa. Need somewhere for employees to stay while working in town? They have you covered at Sealy Corporate with their affordable and comfortable furnished apartments. Call 205-391-6040 today for more information.
Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year, which means... Wait, hold up. Question for the audio engineer.
Go ahead.
Did I read that right? Discover automatically doubles all your cash back?
Yeah, that's what the script says.
So if I get a Discover card right now, I can earn twice the cash back.
Apparently. Wait! Unlimited first-year cash back match. Only from Discover. See terms and learn more at discover.com/match.
Turn your home into restricted airspace. Tell incoming flights you want them diverted. The new Raid Essentials Light Trap plugs into the wall and uses light to attract, then trap flying insects like fruit flies and mosquitoes. Its 24/7 continuous attraction provides insecticide-free protection that's people and pet friendly. Consider air service interrupted. New Raid Essentials Light Trap, insecticide-free protection.
Kelley Blue Book is the one-stop shop for pricing, fixing, selling, and instant cash offering. Instant Cash Offer is exactly what it sounds like. An official offer to buy or trade your car. Just enter your VIN or license plate, answer a few questions about your car's history, and what kind of condition it's in. In minutes, you'll receive an offer to sell or trade your car that you can be sure is fair. Then choose a dealer to purchase your car and schedule a time to meet. For all of the its, KBB.com.
Interact with the Martin Houston Show by calling us at 205-342-9904 or tuning into the Martin Houston Show on Facebook.
Good morning. Welcome back into the Martin Houston Show. Could we pull up that Keon Keeley comment from Coach Saban as Kennington addresses the Lonergan statement by Pat. Pat asked the question, Kennington, I'm sorry, that Lonergan, I said earlier, when everybody was talking about how good he was doing, I said, hey, pump the brakes. I didn't say, stop the car. I said, pump the brakes, which means slow down a little bit until we see more. And we've seen a little bit more. And I said, hey, our depth chart really from first to last, first team guy has one start and some playing time against the Arkansas Razorbacks where he did really good. But the reality of it is from first to fifth, it may be more of a horizontal vertical depth chart with a slight slant than it is a vertical depth chart. What did you see or hear from Lonergan? And rumor is that he got some reps with ones and twos, and he looked the same as he did against the threes and fours.
Yeah. First of all, when the Marshall Dillon reference, I had to look that up during the break, and that is a reference that definitely predates me, but it is a good reference. So he's referring to Matt Dillon, who's a fictional character in this movie called Gunsmoke, and he was like the marshal of the town. So wild gunslinger, I'm sure, quick to the draw and all of that. So that's a good reference. I'm going to have to keep that in my back pocket. But as far as Dylan Lonergan, I mean, he is somebody who's just continuously impressed, I think, at every turn. Coming in as an early enrollee, kind of balancing the football and the baseball aspect. But he had a really good A-Day. I thought he was really good in the open practice. And I'm not surprised that he's kind of continuing to ascend because it just looks like, nothing is too big for him, when things are presented. I do think a lot of times you do have to kind of temper those expectations, like you said, because even if he does, get those, ones and two reps on occasion, that's not something that is consistent, like on the same level as like a Milroe, Simpson, or Buckner. A lot of his reps are kind of with threes and the lower guys on the depth chart, which he does do well in. And then when he gets the opportunity to kind of play up, it seems like he's doing well there. So I don't, foresee him kind of getting into the mix as the quarterback position this year. If he does, then I think a bigger conversation would be, what does that mean for Alabama season if, Lonergan was to rise to, let's say, number 2 on the depth chart, or maybe even get on the field at some point this year. But I definitely think, going into next spring, that is a name that is one that fans are going to want to watch. And I feel like, he's going to be, in the mix in this conversation for years.
Yeah, a couple of quick things there. One is, what will that do to next year's class if he were to win the job? Julian would be like, maybe not. I would tell you in a heartbeat that would do damage. It may not stop it, but I look at, because it didn't stop Tua from coming when Jalen did it. But to me, it reminds me a lot of the Jalen Hurts situation, where there was a bunch of older guys, not old, but older guys already in camp. And he came in and caught some eyes early and then just proceeded to chip away at it and slowly found himself as a second team guy and truly was a first team guy. Since you were at practice, some people say Milroe had a great scrimmage. Some people say Milroe and all the quarterbacks had a great scrimmage. Some people say that Milroe created separation. Some people say Milroe didn't. What's Kennington's assessment?
Yeah, I would probably lean more to created separation. And I think when you say that, though, I think it's relative. Like, to say creating separation doesn't mean wide gap. But I do think, it could mean that he's pulling ahead slightly at this point. And the fall camp's about halfway over. It's the first scrimmage. So at this midway point, to say that he is slightly ahead, I don't think would be too much of a stretch. I do think it's a competition between, the top 3 guys. But at the end of the day, if you just look at where this competition has been trending for a while, I mean, it has been kind of setting up for Milroe to take this by the horns, as Coach Saban said at the beginning of camp. I mean, he was number 2 on the depth chart last year, started a game against Texas A&M. They won that game, goes into spring practice, was continuously, repping with the ones consistently alongside Ty Simpson. Going into fall camp, it remains to be the same at the open practice. Even though everybody gets reps with the ones, when they go into kind of like their positional drills, Jalen Milroe is the one who is, first up, at each turn doing the drills first, followed by, Simpson, Buckner, Lonergan, and Holstein. And that could be because he's the most experienced, but I think that also indicates that there is a bit of a pecking order there as well. So it seems like he's kind of been holding that pole position for a while. And even though it's a competition and he's got guys kind of, right behind him nipping at his heels, I do think that, he's maintained that number 1 spot for now.
And as we were talking, and Xavier asked a question about Chris Braswell and whether or not he had some issues with his aggressiveness. Kim, could you play that Saban audio about, we talked about Alabama has so much depth at several positions, Kennington, one of those being outside linebacker. So much so that Jahai Campbell has moved to inside linebacker last year, and then they even added more depth this year at that position in terms of 5 stars and a couple 4 stars. But Saban did talk a little bit about that position, and then we'll circle back on that.
They've got to both learn, and they're learning and they're progressing. But those guys weren't here. We only had 4 guys that weren't here, wasn't here in the spring. So their learning curve is a little bit behind, a lot of the other guys. But they have a lot of potential. They have a lot of ability. I just think that, outside linebacker is a position that not very many guys played. When they were in high school, they played defensive end. They rushed up the field all the time. So to teach guys how to play that is a little bit of a work in progress. How do you drop? When do you drop? How do you stand up and play and use your hands? When can you rush up the field and when can you not? So all those things are, sort of, things that those guys need to learn. But
Man, we're happy to have them both here. They got tremendous talent and ability. They got the right attitude, and they're working hard.
Yeah, that's Saban talking about Keely and Pierre, two more guys that they added to that mix. Kennington, who did you see run out there the most with the ones in terms of the outside linebacker position? Kind of what's the rotation there?
Yeah. As far as Saturday scrimmage, I wasn't there specifically, but from what I understand, obviously Dallas Turner's out there, and then you have, Braswell, Robinson, Cott. Those are like the top four that are, in the mix. You got to think about Jeremiah Alexander. But I think, with Keely and Yanze Pierre, there is an opportunity for both of those guys to get on the field if they keep progressing. I think you look at what Saban has said, you kind of have to read between the lines there where he says, okay, these guys clearly have the talent to play. It's really more so about teaching them those kind of nuances and those techniques about the position, which is exactly what fall camp is for, especially for those two guys who weren't there during spring practice. So they have the ability. At this point, it's about teaching them the techniques and making sure that when they're out there, they're not playing overly aggressive or getting caught out of position because they're just so raw. But I do think, it's one of those positions where you can never have too many pass rushers. You can never have too many guys at that position. And I think that there is a pathway for those two to potentially make an impact this fall. I think it's just a matter of how much can they develop over the second half of fall camp. Like the first half, a lot of it was understanding the foundation, understanding the techniques and learning how they practice, learning the drills and those things. Can they kind of flip the switch in the second half of fall camp and kind of put themselves in a position to get into that rotation? Right now, I'll probably, limit it at the top four of those experienced guys because they've been in the system and they have some playing experience. But I think if Keely and Pierre can kind of turn things on in the second half of fall camp, I think they can make themselves into the rotation as well.
Okay.
And speaking of the middle linebacker position with Jahad Campbell, as is mentioned, he's been moved there. Is it kind of getting settled on who's going to be the top two guys on the inside? We all know Deontay Lawson has the Mike position locked up for the most part, but it seems that there's more competition at that will position between Campbell and Marshall and potentially Justin Jefferson. Who's the guy taking the reins there?
Yeah, I think, Jahad Campbell is in that driver's seat to start alongside Deontay Lawson, but I think it really could be more closer to a three-man rotation with Tresman Marshall, who, from what I understand, had a big day on Saturday as well. So he's somebody, again, really experienced, comes from Georgia where he, played for several years, and had it not been for injuries, I think probably could be in the NFL right now if he would have stayed healthy and got the rotation snaps that he would have gotten otherwise. So I think you're looking at a top two with Lawson and Campbell. I think those are going to be the two guys that walk on the field. They're going to be the starters. But I do think Tresman Marshall is right there in terms of a guy that's probably going to be the top sub off of the bench and is going to play a lot as well. As far as Justin Jefferson, I do believe he is a little behind right now coming in. And just like understanding the defense. I know that Saban has spoken about that a lot, that he's a little behind in terms of kind of understanding how they practice and the schemes and those things. I think Sean Murphy is a little bit ahead of him. I'll probably put him and Tresman as the 3 and the 4 behind Lawson and Campbell at 1 and 2, but that doesn't mean that Justin Jefferson can't insert himself into the mix as well. So I guess the short way to answer would be Lawson and Campbell as the starters. Tresman Marshall will probably be that next guy. And then there's kind of a competition between Jefferson and Murphy to become that fourth guy.
All right. That is awesome. Hey, one more quick question for you, Ken, can kind of let you wrap things up from your side. From what you've seen, you can take any position, running backs or wide receivers, whatever. What's the group that gives you the biggest concern right now, and which group have you seen as the group that's probably taking the biggest leap forward this camp?
Yeah, I'll probably say the position that worries me the most is the offensive line. I think you have, and I say worry in the sense of, that you have probably a really good frontline starting group. Like that first 5 that goes out there, you have confidence that they'll be able to play well and establish a physical game, but the depth behind that position is in question. I think particularly on that left side of the offensive line, that left tackle spot, particularly where you're going to have two guys in Pritchett and Proctor who are competing but haven't played at the college level to that degree. And then, Miles McVay, another highly touted guy, has kind of been out there a little thin at the tackle spot. So you have to kind of worry about that. And then, when Saban says we only have, we got 6 or 7 guys who are ready to play, if one guy gets hurt, you might be down to 5 or 6. We know it's a long season. SEC's a physical conference. There's a lot of attrition that can happen. So I think, for that reason, and the offensive line is going to be so critical for this season because, Alabama's going to try to run the ball. They have a new quarterback. They're going to have to keep him upright. They're going to have to run the ball to make things comfortable for whoever is going to be the starting quarterback. So I would say offensive line for the depth component is probably, my biggest concern right now. I think the group that's taken the biggest step forward will probably be the secondary. And I know that Saban said that they had, miscommunication in the scrimmage that maybe have led to some explosive plays. But you think about Caleb Downs taking another step after spring practice. Jalen Key and Trey Amos have both been really good additions to the secondary and are added to that competition. They're both going to play this fall. Devontae Smith's ascension to the first team, I think, is a huge storyline in fall camp and what that allows for them to do rotation-wise and putting Malachi Moore back at star. And then obviously Terry and Arnold, Kool and McKinstry are continuing to do their thing as well. So I think that's a group. Last year, we saw how many explosive plays they gave up. We saw it wasn't a buttoned-up secondary, compared to past years. But I think that's a group that's really taken a step forward this fall, and I'm excited to see what they do.
Kennington is never enough time, man. We have to get you on even more, but thanks for being a regular part of the show. Every Monday we have at Skinny Kenny of The Athletic, Kennington Smith. You can follow him there. Thanks for being a part of the show, man. We'll look forward to what you have to break down after the next scrimmage. And anything particular you got coming up that the audience needs to be looking for?
Yeah, myself and Seth Emerson, who covers Georgia for The Athletic, we're working on a state of the conference piece together. So we're going to kind of rank all the teams in the SEC by tiers, put out some bold predictions for the season, talk about what's changing in the conference, kind of like a reset, how is the SEC different this year compared to a year ago. So stay locked to that, and then just the daily news and notes of Alabama spring practice, because we're going to have several availabilities.
All right, follow at Skinny Kenny to stay up with what he has going on with The Athletic. That's Kennington Smith of The Athletic. Thanks, Kennington. We'll catch up with you next Monday. Coming back on the other side, we'll have more conversation. We'll wrap up this edition of the Martin Houston Show. Thanks to the great folks over at Alabama One, alabama1.org. Go check them out.
Tide 100.9 traffic.
From the Townsend Nissan Traffic Center, no active wrecks on this Monday morning. We do see some congestion in Northport. This is on McFarland coming in from West Tuscaloosa County. If you see conditions, give me a call. Get a $6,000 instant discount on all Nissan Titans and the heavy-duty Titan XD, plus 0% up to 60 months. At Townsend Nissan, I'm Captain Ray.
Here's what's trending on the Tuscaloosa thread.
Good Monday morning. Alabama's legal battle over congressional districting heads back to federal court today. The U.S. Supreme Court ordered the legislature to add a second majority-minority district. Instead, lawmakers increased minority voting in just one district, but it's not a majority-minority. Plaintiffs in the case are asking the federal court to turn down the state's drawn map and draw one of their own. Click TuscaloosaThread.com for more local news, sports, and weather coverage throughout the day. It's free. Don Hartley, Town Square Media, Tuscaloosa.
Meet Bruce.
Hey there.
He's a busy soccer dad who's trying hard to learn the game.
Go for the end zone.
Whoops. Luckily, other things come easy, like banking with Chase. On a tip from his banker, he set up AutoSave in the Chase mobile app. So what are you saving for, Bruce?
Father-daughter soccer camp.
Smart bankers, convenient tools, one bank with the power of both. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Autosave requires a Chase checking and savings account. Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC.
The Tuscaloosa County chapter of the University of Alabama National Alumni Association is getting ready to roll with the tide at their annual fall kickoff event that is open to alumni, parents, and fans. It will be on Thursday, August 17 from 6 to 8:30 at the Skygate Club of the Westgate Luxury Condominiums. For more information and to buy tickets, search Kickoff Event 2023 on Eventbrite.
All of the West Alabama high school football scores every Friday night all season long on Tide 100.9. High school score updates brought to you by 4th District Congressman Robert Adderholt.
Keep it locked into Tide 100.9 for more of the Martin Houston Show with Martin Houston and X's and O's Sports Xavier Houston.
All right, we're going to get that audio of Saban talking about Jam Miller as we get ready to roll out here. Hey, remember this. Check us out at Harvest Church. Harvest Church, we got a great service coming up in September, the Reclamation service, where we'll have 5 different services starting Sunday morning at 10 and then 4 night services Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. We'll have guest speakers on 3 of those nights, and then I'll wrap things up on Wednesday night. We'll have Isaac Armstrong of Revival Ministry, Derek Johnson, Derek Johnson, evangelist and pastor, and then local evangelist and pastor, and then Randy Fuller of New Beginning. So it's going to be a great time. That's September 10th. Through the 13th. So looking forward to that. Make plans to come out and be a part. All right. Let's see if we can get that audio from Jam real quick. What Saban had to say about Jam Miller.
Yeah, Jam's got a little, thigh bruise or something. So he's been a little limited for a couple of days, but he's working through it. He actually scrimmaged some today. I don't think he was probably 100%, but before he got hurt, he was doing really, really well. And I think, again, running back we've got 4 or 5 guys that can play there. The key to the drill is keeping them healthy so that they can continue to develop and progress and complement each other.
Hey, that's Nick Saban. That's 5. He said 4 or 5 guys, which I think once again, when you hear Saban start talking in his opening comments, about how long can guys play at a high level, that's Saban positioning to have more rotation than normal. Thought Kennington's assessment was interesting about the O-line. He's a little worried about the O-line in terms of depth. To me, I don't know if it's depth or if it's left tackle. You know what I mean? Like you look and you go, there's a lot of talent. There's Olaf and, Ferguson and Pritchett and Dalcourt and Proctor and, there's a lot of guys, McVeigh. There's a lot of guys. The question is, where do they play and what's the rotation if one of those guys go down? So we'll have to watch that. From your viewpoint, which group do you have the biggest concern with right now?
From what I've been hearing, it has to be the wide receivers just because of the drop issue that seems to be something that's continued. There's all the talent in the world in that group, and we don't know necessarily who it is that has the drops, but that seems to be a little bit of an issue. So if that can get cleared up, I have all the faith in the world in them, because as Kennington said, there's 8 to 10 guys vying for playing time. But how many of those 8 to 10 guys are consistent and reliable catching the ball?
Yeah, I would say that my concern there is not as probably big as everyone else, because how many different balls are you looking at? I mean, there's, the reality of it is every quarterback throws the ball a little different. And there's a reason you rep. And the rep is not just for timing, but the catching of the ball, the rotation of the ball, how it hits your hands, the torque it has on it when it hits your hands and all of that. And right now with 5 guys rotating and undoubtedly 3 to 4 guys in and out with 1s and 2s, maybe 5 guys in with 1s and 2s, that can be tough. So I'm not going to get extremely worried about it. I'll watch it as we go, but we'll see what happens there. Anything else you have that you want to hit on from the weekend? We got all week to talk about the scrimmage, and we'll do that. But anything before we get out of here you want to hit on?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, just like the overall reports coming out about the quarterback competition. I think this is the week that you start to see that separation be created in the number of reps. We talked about it at the beginning of last week, end of the week. Now, it seemed like going into the scrimmage, it was 10 reps, 9 reps, 8 reps for these guys, and it didn't allow them to be able to build a consistent rapport. And you even had some of that throughout the scrimmage on Saturday from things that I've heard. But I think this is the week that you start to see the separation. And I think you take that horizontal with a slant and start to make it vertical as far as the depth chart at the quarterback position. I think you'll see Jalen getting more reps with the 1s. I think you'll see Ty probably he's been getting. And I think Buckner and so on, it'll kind of slowly drop off.
Yeah.
But with the what we're hearing from Dylan Lonergan, maybe Dylan is taking over Tyler's reps, and we don't know. But I do believe that Milroe's reps will go up this week, while Ty stays around the same to make this more of a 2 quarterback competition.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get the guy the reps he needs and the experience he needs if you still running 5 guys by this Saturday. So I do think by this Saturday you'll begin to see a 1A, 1B probably, and then you'll have 2, 3, and then the other guy be running scout team, or at least one of them, if not 2 of them, be running scout team. So we'll watch it. We'll see if we get some eyes out at practice, some ears out at practice. And we'll let you know. We'll have DC Capstone Report joining the conversation. He got some insight from practice. I have several notes that I did not get to. We had some comments on the quarterback position made on chat that we didn't dig into too much, but we'll add that to the conversation. Still some concern over this becoming a nasty conversation. We don't want that. We want this to be about the best player, and then Alabama fans getting behind the guy who wins the job. Will it be a situation where Nick Saban pulls the trigger here pretty quick, or are he going to let that cake keep on baking? We'll talk about it right here on the Martin Houston Show. I want to thank Kim Rankin, for our brand manager, for jumping up early this morning. Thanks, Kim, for what you do each and every day, and thanks for being a part of the show this morning. And thanks, X. Thanks, Kennington Smith. Thanks to all the callers, listeners, viewers, and chatters who have been a part of the show. I'm Martin Houston. Remember this: trust in the Lord always, lean not your own understanding. Always acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Roll Tide out there, everybody. Have a blessed day.
Thank you for listening to the Martin Houston Show on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide